The Capitol riot hearings have begun, and it's mostly Democrats. I mean, I guess you can argue that there are some Republicans, Liz Cheney and Rep Adam Kinzinger, but no conservative, for the most part, really likes them. And I think Liz Cheney's approval rating among the Republican Party is like -40, or favorability is like -43% or something like that, like serious disapproval. So the panel's mostly just establishment uniparty players. Well, at this hearing, several of the Capitol police officers cried. They looked at the footage from January 6th and they wept. And so did Adam Kinzinger. He sobbed, at least as it's being reported. Some say he's choking up or tearing up, but he was fighting back tears. This whole thing is a farce. What happened on January 6th was really bad. You watch some of the footage that's released. We're still missing most of the footage, but a lot of the footage, it's bad, man. I mean, there are people rioting. They're attacking cops. It was not a good thing. Now, there are a lot of people who didn't fight the cops. A lot of people who the doors were open and they walked in. Still a problem. They went in, but a lot of people had no idea what was going on. A lot of these people are being charged with serious crimes. Here's my main issue with this. I have no problem coming out and saying what happened on January 6th was abhorrent. It was awful. By all means, people should be held to account. But when the Democrats parade around with these Republicans, acting like this is the end of democracy, or at the very least was close to it, but these brave officers staved off the apocalypse, I ask them about every single instance from last year where you had overt and literal insurrection. Not even the last year. How about one of the activists tried shutting down the Kavanaugh hearings or banging on the Supreme Court door? How about when pink hat wearing activists actually shut down some of the congressional buildings? And how about when 60 Secret Service officers were injured in an insurrection, when far leftists ripped down the barricades, started beating people, and set a Secret Service guard tower or building on fire? What about when they tried setting fire to that church? Where were the hearings on that? Now, of course, I can criticize the Democrats, and we'll get into exactly what they said, but I think the criticism belongs to the Republican Party. The Democrats are going to Democrat. They're going to advocate for seizing power. They're going to demand more power, and they'll likely get it. The Capitol Police are going to be expanded based on this, and the Republicans do nothing. The Republicans, a pressure release valve for people who are tired of watching the Democrats stomp all over their rights. What do Republicans do to actually help anybody? They sit on their hands. Well, what did I see? Someone tweeted, I can't remember who it was. The Democrats seize power and impeach the president, and the Republicans lower taxes, which benefits the ultra wealthy, I suppose. Sure. I guess, regular working class people getting a couple $100 back every month is a good thing. What else are you going to do, I guess? I suppose the Republicans could actually engage in some kind of pushback and defend this country and its values and liberty and justice for all, but they don't do that. Instead, they sit around and people continue to vote for them. Now, I get why Donald Trump was popular. I get why Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene are popular, and I get why the establishment is going after them. And I also understand why people like Adam Kinzinger, a duplicitous, deceitful individual, gets up there and weeps and acts like we almost lost this country. But what does he have to say about a year of insurrection from the far left? So I'll tell you this. I'm not playing whataboutism. It's all bad. But you expect me to get behind their calls for expanding government power when they allow a group of extremists to do whatever they want? No way. They're going to use that power to embolden extremists. So I am not going to let them use this as some stupid power grab. Let's read the story and see exactly what is happening with these crocodile tears. We also have the story of one officer claiming all the racial slurs being spat at him. And if that's true, you know what? That's horrifying. But where were the hearings when far leftists were doing the exact same thing and on multiple occasions? I didn't think so. And you know what? I'll blame the Republicans for this one. Democrats going to Democrat, right? Before we get started, head over to timcast.com, become a member to get access to exclusive members-only segments from the Timcast IRL podcast, as well as an ad-free experience, and you'll help support our journalists who are doing a lot of work. And we're slowly expanding. We're getting more and more to the nitty-gritty. We just had an exclusive story the other day about a man who was harassed by BLM into taking his own life. It's a very, and being charged, in my opinion, falsely by the government. These are the kind of things that we need to be talking about and covering. Go to timcast.com, become a member, but don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, share this video with your friends if you want them to know this stuff and think it's important. Let's read this first story. You guys won. Republican Adam Kinzinger chokes up at January 6th hearing and thanks cops after GOP colleague Liz Cheney vowed to find out what happened every minute of that day in the White House. Now, can you call Cheney and Kinzinger Republicans? At this point, I gotta say probably not. I would be surprised if they win their elections coming up, Liz Cheney especially. But you know what? Perhaps. At least they have some of the Republican policy positions behind them. Culturally, however, they may as well be Democrats. The Daily Mail reports Republican reps Kinzinger and Cheney took center stage at Tuesday's hearing on the January 6th MAGA riot, with Kinzinger tearing up as he thanked the police officers for their service and Cheney warning America could face a riot every 4 years if those behind that day are not held accountable for their actions. I was in Washington, D.C., January 20th, 2017, and I saw an insurrection. I saw extremists setting fire to vehicles, destroying property, smashing up windows, and trying to very much disrupt the inauguration. They failed. The police pushed back. Where were the hearings? Where were the Democrats to come out and say that, Democratic politicians had been propping this up? In the past year, we saw extreme riots and damage. Kamala Harris solicited donations to get these rioters out of jail. Where were the hearings to condemn Kamala for inciting a riot? There's one political party in this country, the Uniparty, and the Republicans are a part of that. They exist to make sure there will be no meaningful resistance to the establishment elites stealing power and oppressing and suppressing regular Americans. Quote, I never expected today to be quite as emotional for me as it has been, Kinzinger said, sniffling as he choked back tears. He noted how he got to know many of the officers in the aftermath of that riot. Both he and Cheney hugged a few of the officers at the beginning of the hearing. I think it's important to tell you right now, though, Kinzinger continued, you guys may individually feel a little broken, but he added, you guys won. The emotional day got to almost everyone. They won? Did they? I mean, the rioters still got into the building. They still shut everything down and then left mostly of their own accord after the fact. And it's only now that they are rounding people up. Many of the people who are getting arrested from what happened at the Capitol did not get arrested at the scene. Did the police win? No, they failed. They're failures. The city failed to have the police readily available. They rejected National Guard that was offered to them by the Trump administration. And now they're crying crocodile tears, acting like they bravely staved off the apocalypse, as if a bunch of unarmed idiots entering a building will somehow change the seats of government in this country. It's not the 1600s anymore. They said the emotional day got to almost everyone, lawmakers and witnesses alike. Several times, the officers wiped away tears, particularly when footage from January 6th was shown. The lawmakers got shook up talking about their gratitude for the officers' work. You saved the day. You saved the Constitution, Rep. Zoe Lofgren told them. Some of the most dramatic words came out early on when Cheney, in her opening statement, offered cautionary words about what could happen in the wake of future presidential elections. She called January 6th a cancer on the Constitution. If those responsible are not held accountable, and if Congress does not act responsibly, this will remain a cancer on our constitutional republic, undermining the peaceful transfer of power at the heart of our democratic system. We will face the threat of more violence in the months to come, and another January 6th every 4 years. Did these Trump supporters come up with the idea? They didn't. After witnessing the left get away with everything, being proven time and time again that the left is allowed to be violent, to destroy, and to literally murder people, these people said, oh, I guess that's normal. And it's all wrong. All of the violence. I don't care if it's January 6th or otherwise. But I'll tell you what I'm sick of. They won't do anything about the extremists on the far left. They do almost nothing, to put it mildly, because we'll be fair, there's some people who get arrested. Now they want power. The Capitol Police want to expand. What does that mean? They're going to excuse the extremists on the left, and they're going to arrest people on the right. And that's where we're headed. So no, I don't support the police. I will not back the blue. And it's been several months now. I've been saying abolish the police. And Republicans should be warned. These cops are testifying on behalf of Democrats, crying, saying you are the villains. So by all means, back the blue. And then when the blue comes to your house, takes away your guns, as they already have in many states, don't come crying to me when you say, but I thought supporting the police was the good idea. No. Many good cops have quit, and it's only gotten worse from there. So if you want to sit back and support these officers, by all means, go ahead and do so. I will tell you something really funny. I tweeted abolish the Capitol Police today, and boy, were liberals upset. They were actually, smack talking, and I'm like, in what way is any of this surprising to you? And I just quote tweeted myself from April saying abolish the police. It's funny. When the far left has abolished the police, the left says, oh, they don't really mean it. But it's leftists. Clearly, it's leftists who want to abolish the police. Then when I say abolish the Capitol Police, they say, that's MAGA. Oh, that's Trump. That's right wing. Okay. Whatever fits your narrative, I suppose. I'll stress this, man. The police are going to do what the Democrats tell them to do. They've been doing it. They will do it. I watched a guy get arrested in Seattle after he was being stalked and harassed by Antifa. They arrested the victim. That's what they'll do. We've already seen police go to the homes of individuals who are being harassed and arrest the victims. If this keeps up, I think the future is fairly predictable. Given a long enough period of time, could only be a few years, you will be the victim of a harassment campaign. They'll accuse you of saying naughty words, and the cops are going to show up to your house and say, well, it's incitement. They'll argue that you having a bad opinion was incitement, and incitement's a crime. That's how they're going to play it. We've already seen people get arrested in their own homes. It's happened, and it'll happen more. They say 6 months after the riot, 590 people have been charged. More than 300 suspects are still wanted by law enforcement in the aftermath of that day. 5 people died while staff and officers on Capitol Hill remained traumatized over what happened. The committee began its first hearing into January 6th with a dramatic new footage from the day, showing Trump supporters overrunning the building and attacking police officers. It also contained harrowing testimony from 4 offices at the Capitol that day, who recounted being physically beaten by the rioters, being called obscenities, and fearing for their lives. Quote, we're not asking for medals and recognition. We just want justice and accountability, said Sergeant Aquilino Gonal of the U.S. Capitol Police. No, look, I can respect that. 100%. I can. These cops should not have been attacked, should not have been beaten, and I've seen the footage. I saw the footage that day. The tear gas being released in the rotunda. I mean, it was horrifying. It was stupid. I've also seen the footage of the guy yelling at the cops, why won't you do something about this? As the rioters were smashing the windows. It should not have happened. People shouldn't have gone in the building. And you know what's good? A good bit of evidence to help you understand that is that there were many people who did not go in the building, who walked to the Capitol, saw what was happening, said, no way, no way. And there was that one man, he walks to the cops and says, why aren't you doing anything about this? And then there's the Democrats who are at fault. They did not have the police available. They did not have, they rejected the National Guard because Trump offered it. They were so incredibly, what's the right word? They hate Trump so much. Now, of course, first fault falls with the rioters. So by all means, punishment. Shouldn't have been there. The riot was awful. I can absolutely say that of these police. But tell me then why it is. Why is it that we do not get justice over what happened in the past year? That Kamala Harris gets away with what she did. Fundraising, soliciting funds, material support for terrorists. So you want me to come out and defend these cops? You want me to come out and say, oh, woe is me? I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it because I don't trust them. I don't trust the government to wield the power properly because they haven't been. And I don't trust the Democrats or the Republicans. And I think the Republicans are just standing in the way. Gatekeepers to make sure there's no meaningful opposition. It's not the first time Kinzinger cried. Kinzinger gets emotional over 2014 General John Kelly's speech to Gold Star families. I can respect crying over the loss of life, Gold Star families and everything like that. But this guy just seems to be a sociopath. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Kinzinger just seems to say whatever he needs to say to win favors from powerful individuals. He doesn't seem to be a principled individual at all. And that seems to be who he is. So the Republicans, I wonder if they're ever going to remove him. From Esquire, A Capitol police officer slammed his fist on the table while addressing January 6th, denying congressmen. Meanwhile, other officers' testimony suggested that what happened today was not at all random. That's right. One of the officers was outraged. He was like, oh, boom, and he slams the table. How dare you? In an emotive propagandistic display that makes me say, you know, if it were me, if I was like the chair and I had the ability, he slammed the table, I would be like, excuse me. You slam that table one more time and raise your voice and we will remove you. I'm not playing these games with these people who want to come in and cry and act like the apocalypse almost happened while they do nothing. It was in D.C. The far left tore down the barricades and set fire to a building. Another building almost burned down a church. Where were they? We just want justice and accountability. Well, you know what? I can respect that. You know why? Where were the Republicans? Where was the hearing from Republicans? Where was any single Republican to come out and demand a hearing on the insurrection? They don't do it. I despise the Republicans. Yeah, I get it. The populists are something else. You know, Steve Bannon, Marjorie, he's not a politician, but, you know, his message to the people who support him, Donald Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, to a greater extent, Matt Gaetz and Josh Hawley. But where are they to ever fight back? Cowards. What a pathetic political party. Now, here's the one that I find the most egregious, and I don't believe. But maybe it happened. Officer Dunn, testifying, says one woman in a pink MAGA shirt yelled, "You hear that, guys? This N-word voted for Joe Biden." Then the crowd, perhaps around 20 people, joined in screaming, "Boo, effing N-word." That's from this black police officer. No one had ever called me that word while wearing the uniform of USCP. I'm sorry, that just sounds like that happened. Like you were fighting with people, and then in the midst of the chaos that you have claimed was an insurrection and violence and chemicals being sprayed everywhere, someone stopped to yell out that you were using a racial epithet, and then they all started yelling it? I mean, I'm sorry, man. I've been to a lot of right-wing events, and that just seems to me to be over the top. But maybe. You know, if that really happened, I got no problem saying that's horrible. How about Officer Dunn? Were you wearing a body camera that day? Do we have footage we can release to show the people doing it? Because if they were, I will absolutely say you are in the right. Call them out. These people are disgusting. But I'm sorry. This just reeks to me of propaganda. But perhaps, I don't know. This guy's making the claim. I've got no reason to say he's lying. I've got no evidence other than my personal bias and emotions. So he may be correct. Absolutely. I mean, the people who are willing to fight with cops to storm into the Capitol, not your run-of-the-mill conservatives. Typically, conservatives were like, back the blue, baby. I don't see them doing this. In which case, whoever these people were, I wouldn't be surprised if they actually were yelling this. I'll tell you what my problem is. There was no hearing when we saw this over and over and over again. How about this story? From July 24th, 2018, Portland ICE protesters spewed racist insults. Where were the hearings? Where were the Republicans to come out and have a hearing? They didn't. And you know what? They could have. I mean, this was before the midterms. Republicans had the ability. They controlled the House and the Senate. The Republicans only exist to prevent any meaningful resistance. From Oregon Live, they say, in emails obtained by the newsroom, one African-American officer reported to an administrator, protesters began yelling racial slurs, including the N-word. The officer said he was also called, I can't repeat these words, derogatory things by Antifa. There's a video of it, actually. There is video footage of it. And I remember when the story came out, and I was surprised to hear. You're watching this police officer standing guard in front of an ICE building. I think it's ICE. And they're screaming racial slurs at him. I witnessed this. Not that one specifically, but I was in Portland, and there was a Proud Boys rally, protest. And Antifa showed up. And there was a black Proud Boy marching with the group, and you could hear across the street Antifa screaming racial slurs. And this black man, seething, went to the crosswalk, about to cross the street, when another Proud Boy stopped him and grabbed him and said, "Don't let him taunt you." And then he said, "Ignore them. You're my brother. We're brothers. We're here." It was interesting. They said the Proud Boys are white supremacists and all that. Really weird for a white man to embrace a black man and say, reject the racial slurs from these extremists. The far left love spouting racial slurs, and they think they're allowed to. They're racial identitarians. By all means, white supremacists are bad too, but you know what? They have the same ideology. They literally do. I suppose one group is just more upfront about what they believe and what they ultimately want. In this video from July 29th, 2020, titled "White BLM Supporter Uses the N-Word and is Educated by Black People." This guy's holding up a BLM sign, and he used the N-word but tried justifying it because he didn't use the hard ER, he says. And everyone's still like, dude, who do you think you are that you can come here? What happened was there was a black cop standing behind the barricade explaining to these people filming how he's been abused and called racial slurs. This guy walks up and thinks he's allowed to do it. It's amazing, if you ask me, that these kinds of things have been happening for years, but now we're getting a congressional hearing because the establishment, the uniparty, doesn't care about the working class. They don't care about your home or where you live or rising crime. They don't care. They just want to extract from the system, to take from you, to print money, to pump it out to the revolving door jobs of the CEOs of big companies who come in, get these jobs. They pay their buddies, no bid contracts. That's what they do. That's the Democrats and the Republicans. Now, in the past couple of years, Republicans have seen a bigger shift because they're more willing to push back and fight, and the Democrats aren't. Or I should say, I'm sorry, the progressives aren't. The Democrats will lie, cheat, and steal. But let's talk about the hypocrisy here. February 1st, 2021, report armed Antifa members violently took over a hotel. That sounds like insurrection to me. Here's a tweet from the Washington Examiner. This is from May 30th, 2020. Clashes between Secret Service and protesters continue to escalate at the White House. This ended with rioters tearing down White House barricades and attacking the Secret Service. In fact, they set fire to a guard post of some sort. Fire. And then we get this from WUSA 9. At least 150 local and federal officers were injured during the first week of protests in D.C. Bill Barr said on June 7th, 750 officers were injured during the first week. A fifth of those were in D.C. 750 injured officers in the ongoing insurrection. Maybe it's simple. Easy to explain for all of you. That insurrection won. It worked. And now the Democrats are like, we're going to do what they say because they're extremist, violent lunatics. And now that the Democrats have the executive branch and Congress, both branches, they can wield power of law enforcement as they see fit. And so the Republicans who were unwilling to do it can now reap the benefits. But you know what? The real Republicans, I'll put it this way. The establishment Republicans, McCarthy, they're happy about all this. They hate Trump. They only pretend to support these things in a desperate bid to cling to power. It's the idea. They're more effective in office than they would be out of office. Do they support a populist message, a pro-America or America First message, or peace, truth, and justice? No, of course not. They're pro-establishment. They believe that there are elites who should be in control and should own and control everything. And they're subservient to their big pharmaceutical, their big tech, their corporate oil overlords, all of the major corporations. That's all they care about. I don't care if they're Democrats or Republicans. Many Republicans are only pretending. We have this story from Police One. At least 50 Secret Service agents injured by rioters. And then an update from CNN. More than 60 Secret Service officers and agents were injured near the White House this weekend. Now, that's differentiated from the 150 local law enforcement in D.C. because this one specifically highlights the 60 Secret Service officers. The reason that's significant is that not insurrection. Secret Service are tasked with protecting the president in the White House. When this happened, do you know what the media said? They mocked Trump for being ushered in to the presidential bunker. Do you remember this? When the insurrectionists came and tore the barricades down and fought with cops, Donald Trump was brought to the emergency bunker. And the media laughed. They laughed. Ha, Trump's a coward, they said. It's funny. This is where we're at. America is on the brink, is on the verge, or whatever. They mocked the president when he was ushered to an emergency bunker due to a severe and ongoing insurrection outside. These people set fire to a church across the street, and they made fun of Trump for it. I am sick of watching these conservatives, people, on Twitter saying, well, Nancy Pelosi can say this, but what about this? She is not talking to you. She doesn't care what you think. None of these people do. The idea that you are getting anything across to them is laughable. The idea that you making your point on Twitter is somehow going to convince one of these Democrat establishment or liberal voters of anything is laughable. These are the people who are willing to mock and laugh at Trump when insurrectionists set fire to a building, multiple buildings, tear down barricades, and injure 60 Secret Service members, and then literally cry over January 6th. And how am I'm supposed to care about this? Spare me. I don't care. Senator Rand Paul, BLM rioter punched a police officer in the face, requiring surgical repair. Punishment, released on his own recognizance. Non-violent trespassing in Capitol on January 6th. Solitary confinement without parole. Double standard, you bet. Rand, you're great. But clearly, the very few actual good Republicans who are in office don't have the ability to do anything. Rand can filibuster all day and night. Nothing changes. Rand can call this out all day and night. Nothing changes. This is dangerous. And this is what I fear. There's a reason why you saw what happened on January 6th. It's because people feel hopeless. The Kurt Richter rat experiment. You familiar? A man took some cylinders. He put some rats. They filled them with water and put rats in it. The rats could not climb high enough to get out. They couldn't climb at all. It was a cylinder. And it was too wide for them to hold themselves up. So they could do nothing but swim. After 15 minutes, the rats gave up and they drowned. The experiment then carried on. This time, something different happened. New rats were placed inside these cylinders, and they swam. But for about 15 minutes before they nearly drowned, and then as soon as they were about to give up, they were lifted out, dried off, and allowed to rest. They were then placed back inside the cylinders to swim desperately once again. What happened this time? 15 minutes. No, 60 hours. So the meme states, but a substantially longer amount of time, nearly 2 or 3 days. They call this the hope experiment because the rats truly believed that something would come and save them. They decided to hold out for as long as possible before giving up and drowning. Those without hope simply fell to the bottom and died. And now I tell you, where we are at now scares me. Here's a story from the Daily Mail. Democratic mayors in 20 cities that have slashed police budgets or called to defund them also used millions of taxpayer dollars to fund private personal security. So the rat experiment. When people lose all hope and feel like they are watching their homes be burned down, they give up. They stop believing in the system. They don't feel like there's anything that's going to work for them or help them or save them. And so you get violence. And it is scary. I was reading once that people need food, shelter, and security. Security means the knowledge that you will not be dragged from your home in the middle of the night. It means the knowledge that you can go to work and there will be food. It means hope that you will be, or a belief that your home will be there and your food will be there. Without food, you starve, you go nuts. Without a home, and on large scales, people get angry and revolt. When these things are threatened, you get a revolution. Food being probably the most important, simply because you don't get food for a long enough period of time, people lose it right away. But security, it's that anxiety feeling, sitting there questioning whether or not you will be safe, whether your children will be safe. And it's almost like torture. At any moment, they could come in, kick your door in and drag you out, and you're shaking and convulsing, terrified. Right now, we have massive riots, or I should say we had massive riots over the past year. Protests still exist, but for the most part, they've mostly died down. For over 100 days, Portland was under siege. Small towns across this country, no justice. But people hoped. They hoped. And then that hope was ripped away. And especially now, it's worse than ever. This hearing says to me that the last little bit of hope may have just been crushed. And now I fear what people will do. I'll remind everybody. Peaceful, persuasive, resourcefulness. We win this through culture, through inspiring young people. But I'm worried irrational people do irrational things. And seeing these hearings, feeling like, what's the point? They're not going to stop Antifa, but they're going to bash these people over the head. It sounds like it'll only get worse. Which brings me to these two stories I want to highlight. Democrats slashing these budgets and funding their own security. Why do I highlight that one? It shows you that Democrats are willing to steal from you, take away your police, take away your right to keep and bear arms, but give it all to themselves. Where's the hope? The Democrats are coming out and criticizing anyone who dare challenge them. At the same time, stealing from taxpayers to fund private security while they take away your police. And now we have AOC calling for the abolishment of the carceral system. That's prison. You know what? At this point, call their bluff. I agree. Abolish all police, abolish all prisons. You think I'm joking? If you want to stay in this system where they're going to imprison you for defending yourself, as we've seen with the Jake Gardner case in Omaha, he defended himself. He was threatened with prison. Then keep the prison system. And then when you end up there, I'll be like, we could see this coming a mile away. We know what they have in mind. We know who they hate, and we know they're racists. They take the police are the ones who are going to come confiscate your guns. And the police are the ones who are going to drag you to that prison. So, okay, AOC's right. Abolish the prison system, abolish the police. I would rather defend myself and take personal responsibility than cross my fingers and hope that everything we've seen with double standards doesn't affect me. I'm not so convinced. I think it's only a matter of time before, well, I mean, they've already done it, arresting people from their own homes after they were being harassed. It'll get worse. I'm not, what's the right word? I don't think we should be negative or defeatist. I think what you need to do is realize what you are dealing with, and you need to understand how to figuratively fight back. January 6th. Obviously, violence doesn't work. It has given them everything they need to expand government powers to use against their enemies. It's exactly what they were hoping for. Culture building. Now, that's where things get scary for them. You start making fun videos. You start inspiring kids and making cartoons about the founding fathers. You start making children's books, as many conservatives have. What are they going to do about that? Who are they going to convince when you're like, this children's book is a threat? Regular people are going to be like, who cares? What are you talking about? But when they show a violent riot at the Capitol, regular people say, do as you please, take my money. So here's what you got to do. You have to inspire young people. You have to make sure you're keeping an eye on what your kids are being taught. You need to share these messages and tell people, don't let the extremists and the authoritarians take over. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.